Hello, all you beautiful people out there. My name is Jacksepticeye, and in this video, I'm going to talk about horror games, but more specifically, what makes a good horror game, and what a horror game should do, and what it should not do. First off, what a horror game should be like. Okay, this comes down to a lot of things, but I think there are some main points that a horror game should have and stuff that it should strive towards to create that sense of real horror. And by the way, my opinion on what horror should be could be completely different than what another guy's definition of horror could be. Horror for someone else could be panic and trying to kill all these enemies really fast. And that's, I suppose Dead Space still has that kind of horror element to it. But my idea of horror is just sheer atmosphere, sheer dread, and sheer just being frightened all the time and being scared and not knowing what's going to happen and just feeling uneasy all the time. And that's the first point, is feeling uneasy or feeling unsafe. A horror game should never let you feel safe for too long. It should let you feel safe momentarily throughout a game. You need some respite here and there. You can't have non-stop horror all the time, otherwise you just won't be able to play the game for very long. But the game should have a very oppressive atmosphere or a very uneasy atmosphere right from the start the whole way to the finish. You should feel walking around the environment that you're not really sure where you are or what is happening or what could happen. And some games have done this very well. Amnesia, it kind of did it okay. You had those big red sort of jam things happening all the time, and you didn't really know why it was happening, so you kind of felt uneasy, and the whole castle was empty, and you didn't really know what was going on, so it was all quiet, and you felt uneasy all the time. But a game that absolutely nailed this is Silent Hill 3. That game, you just walk through levels, and there is stuff happening on the walls, and there are enemies everywhere, and you don't really know what they are or why they are, how they are. And you don't get into this comfort zone. The whole game is just like, what the hell is happening? Where am I? What's going on? And that sense of dread really aided the atmosphere of the game and let you feel the whole way throughout that you kept guessing, and you never went, oh, well, this is because of this, and you got into a comfort zone and you relaxed and then everything was fine. Amnesia falls into that pitfall after a while, that you kind of realize what's happening or you figure out the pattern of how it's happening, and then you can kind of get into your own comfort zone. It always happens after you finish this big puzzle or you find a key or something. After you find something really important and you hear Daniel let out that sigh of relief and your sanity goes straight back up to the top, you know something is going to happen in that game. So that's another thing a horror game should avoid, is becoming too formulaic and getting into too much of a pattern. It should always keep you guessing, always keep you on your toes. And Amnesia is a game that kind of crippled itself in a way. It's an amazing game. It has great atmosphere, great monsters. You really do feel tense when the monsters come up. But about halfway through the game, you know when the monsters are going to show up. You know how the game works. You know how to avoid everything. And you just kind of get too comfortable, and the scares aren't as profound as they were when you started the game. Next on my list to talk about are the type of scares that you give your gamer. A lot of mods, a lot of little indie games and everything that are coming out recently. I'll pick on Slender the Arrival, whatever you want to call it, Slender the 8 Pages. And I really like that game. It has great atmosphere. It can be very scary at times. The audio is fantastic. The music that kicks in is fantastic. But it's another game that kind of limits itself. It depends entirely on jump scares. And these, I don't really like jump scares. They have their place, and some games, all horror games should have a few jump scares within them, just so you have that sort of shot of adrenaline in you that you don't really know what happened and you get scared very suddenly. But if your whole game depends on jump scares, all you're doing is limiting the scares in your game. All you're doing is like sort of bringing back your game and you're not really letting it flourish the way it should. For example, if you're playing Slender and you're walking around and when that camera flashes or Slenderman pops up in front of your face or the static goes everywhere, that could be a picture of the most beautiful thing in the entire planet. It could be a picture of a kitten. Slenderman could be changed into a kitten, a fluffy little adorable kitten. But you're still going to get scared when he pops up. You're still going to get scared when the static goes and the music kicks in and that picture just pops up in front of your face and terrifies you for that second. And that's kind of the point. Slenderman himself isn't scary. There's nothing scary about Slenderman. At least not to me. I'm not scared by Slenderman. If I saw him right now in a picture, I wouldn't get that feeling of, oh god, that's scary. But it's just the fact that he pops up all the time that makes that game scary. And that to me is not what a horror game should be. It works, but like, how well does it really work? How well crafted is the horror? How well crafted are the scares? It's kind of cheap, and it kind of undermines your players, undermines the people who bought your game. But I still like Slender. I have a full walkthrough of it up on my channel, and I really like the game. It really scared me at times, but still, it's kind of limited. So your scares should always be something that it should come out of nowhere sometimes. But again, I'm going back to Silent Hill, because Silent Hill just does this so well, especially Silent Hill 2 in this regard. Silent Hill 2 had jump scares that weren't jump scares. It built up this music, it built up this atmosphere. You'd go into a room and you knew there was a jump scare in there. You knew there was a jump scare going to happen. And you went up and this door would flap or something and you'd go up and you'd pull it. And I don't know if it's actually Silent Hill 2 or Silent Hill 1 I'm thinking of now. I'm getting all mixed up. I played them all like straight through one after another, and my memory's not as good when I played them the first time. But you'd go up and you'd open a door, and all of a sudden there'd be nothing there, and you'd be like, oh, okay, and you'd settle back down, and you're after having all this tension built up inside you, and then nothing happened. But then as you were leaving the room, all of a sudden something would pop out and terrify the shit out of you. And those were just some brilliant scares. It also had those scares like ambient sounds, which I'll get to, but it always kept you on your toes. You never thought, oh, well, a jump scare is going to happen, and then it happened, and then you got into your comfort zone again. They just changed everything all the time, and you never knew what was going to happen. And that is key. Keep your players on their toes. Just keep them guessing. Another thing is audio. That's why I'm coming to this now. Audio should be present. Well, obviously it should be present throughout the whole game. You can't have a game without audio, but your scary audio should be throughout the whole game, like non-stop. Just have stuff in the background, have stuff in... If you have surround sound nowadays, or good headphones, all games have like directional sound for horror. It really makes them better. But you should have stuff like off in the distance. You should have like crawling on walls. You should have screams in the distance. You should just have ambient effects coming out all the time, just to make the player feel like that sort of shiver on the back of your neck feeling, and you don't really know what's going to happen. And I feel like a lot of games kind of miss out on that aspect, but some games do have no audio when you're walking around. It's just your footsteps, and that can also be just as terrifying. Silent Hill 2 was a game that combined both. You had terrific surround sound, well, not really surround sound, but ambient sounds going around. But you also had moments where you could be walking through fog and there is no sound, only your footsteps. And that can be just as terrifying. If you hear something down in the distance coming at you, man, that can really scare you. That kind of leads me to a point where a lot of games I think are missing out nowadays is having stuff in the unknown. Like if you enter a room, but you can hear a sound, you should enter like a long corridor where you can't see the end of it. And a good scare to me would be having some audio and hearing these kind of footsteps, but you still can't see anything until it's like right on top of you, and that scares the living shit out of me. If you can hear something but you can't see it until it's right on top of you, that is terrifying. And Some older games did this really well, but newer games nowadays, not so much. It's kind of like they show you the monster and they blast you with music at the same time, and it just gets all that fear up inside you and you have to run away. But I don't know, I think they're kind of missing out on some of the really delicious horror that's out there. Another point I wanted to talk about was combat in horror games. This is kind of a taboo subject. A lot of people think you shouldn't have horror, or you shouldn't have combat in your horror games. And there are games that do this, of course, Slender and Amnesia, I'm coming back to them again. And there are games that do too much combat in their games. Dead Space, the new Resident Evil games, they're not even horror anymore. But to me, a horror game should have combat, but not as much as some games. You should limit the combat. A game that's coming out that I wanted to talk about is The Evil Within, and what made me almost jump for joy when I heard it was they said they're not including machine guns or anything like that. No RPGs, no grenades. Well, maybe grenades, I don't know, I haven't heard anything like that. But they're not giving you heavy weapons. So they're giving you like a pistol and maybe limited ammo, and that's the sweet spot for horror. If you take away all the combat, then you get into that pattern scenario again. You get into the Amnesia kind of thing, where if you see an enemy, you know you have to run. You know the only choice you have is to run away and hide in a corner like a little bitch. And that's fine. It works. It worked really well for Amnesia, but again, that pattern, you know when you're going to be comfortable. You know when you're going to be unsafe. But if you give a person a chance to fight back, not too much firepower, fuck you Dead Space, you ruined your own franchise, and now you're gone out of business. But if you give them limited fight back ability, limited combat, fight back ability, that's not a thing. If you give them limited combat with sort of limited ammo, then you give them various ways to deal with the scenario. If they see an enemy that they can run from, they can either shoot it in the face and kill it and use up some of their ammo so they can get through that area faster, or they can run away and hide and wait for that enemy or run around the enemy or whatever. But giving them both options leaves it up to the player how they want to do it. Do you shoot him in the face and get through the area faster, or do you wait, go around him and conserve your ammo because there could be a lot more enemies in the next room? And that kind of stuff, that's what a horror game should be. It should have combat, but limit the combat. Don't overdo it. And that sort of brings me to the end of my video. I'm sure there are a lot more things that I'll think of once I stop recording, and I'll kick myself for not thinking of them while recording, but those are the main points, I think, what make a good horror game, the do's and don'ts. I probably should have had a do, don't sort of thing, make it a bit quirkier, but no, I'm just spitballing off the top of my head, just recording this all at once. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you want as a horror game. Let me know what you think a good horror game should have. Let me know if you like horror games. I myself love horror games. They're like my favorite genre, that or RPGs. But a good horror game can be the best game on the planet in my eyes. And I think a lot of developers these days are kind of missing some opportunities that are there. But The Evil Within is coming, and it looks like it could really bring what I want in a horror game. Amnesia 2 is coming out, A Machine for Pigs, and that looks absolutely amazing. And I really can't wait to play that either, but I kind of feel like it will fall into the same trappings as the first Amnesia game. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm dead wrong. I hope it's completely, well, not completely different, but I hope there's new things in there, but I'm not going to hold my breath. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, hit the little likey like button, thumbs up, and comment below, please. I really want to know what you guys think. This is just my thoughts. I want to know what other people think about horror games and how we can get the word out and change horror games and get them a bit better. And if you like my stuff, please subscribe. It helps more than you could ever know, and I'm extremely grateful to anyone who has subscribed to my channel, and I'm extremely flattered that anyone would subscribe to my channel and watch my stuff. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see all you guys in the next video.